Hey everyone, it's Andrew from Adventures of Sarah, and we are highlighting Croatia this week because we've got three different tours that include Croatia, including one that's just a Croatia only tour coming up in later June. So let's kick things off with my favorite place to eat in Croatia. We're going to bring in Tita, who's always our hostess with the mostest at Kumparicka Goat Farm, which not only makes amazing goat cheeses, but they feed our guests really well with all sorts of tasty things. Hey, Tita, how are you?
Hey Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I wish I was down there
Oh,
enjoying some of the food, but I think I had 4 or 5 or 6 visits there earlier this year, so I guess I can't
that's
complain.
good. We'll be seeing lots of each other. That's great.
Yeah, I think you need to get like the punch card system, like some
For you,
cafes.
definitely. Yeah, not for a lot of people, but for
Yeah.
you, I think I should set it up.
That,
Yeah.
that would be great. I might have a few guests who like would probably get one because I think I've had a few guests that
Yeah,
are on their second or
that's
third one.
true.
Uh, so so just to let guests know, and then I'll let you tell us all about Kumparicka and what you do and kind of what you make and kind of your story. Um, I first went there back in 2013. That was the second time I ran a harvest tour, and
Okay.
I had not been to your place when I brought my guests. I had just there was a pension that the guy who owned it used to be one of the guys who ran the Austrian tourism board. He was an Austrian guy. And he had all these cards for different businesses in Istria. And I saw this one was like goat cheese, and I was like, huh, like I don't have any cheese on my tour, and I love goat cheese. So I kind of like sight unseen just said, okay, let's go there. And I took my guests. And I think when we drove there, we were all wondering if there was actually a goat farm because you guys are kind of in the middle of nowhere.
A little bit, yes.
and didn't know what to expect other than we were hoping it would be good. And when the tour was over, and that's 10 days of hardcore food and wine, I asked everyone what their favorite meal of the tour was, and Kuparichka was 7-7-0, so unanimous vote as their favorite meal.
That's a good result. Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's keep this on our tour. And now we have it on the Harvest tour. We have it on our Veneto Slovenia tour, which we don't even really. We're just in Croatia for like a half a day, but we're basically going down there to eat goat cheese and come back to Slovenia. And now we're gonna have it on our Croatia only tour. So it's on a bunch of different things. So if people can't join us on one tour, hopefully they can visit on one of the other tours. So why don't you tell us, because it is like like everything's the best things are usually great stories as well, and you guys have a crazy super story that how your dad started this.
Yeah. I'm 27 now, but when we first moved here, or when my dad decided to move my family here, I was about 12. So quite some time ago. We were living in the capital in Ljubljana, um, not with zero experience with goats, living in an apartment. And then my dad somehow got this crazy idea to move our family down south, to get a few goats, and start making cheese, which doesn't really make a lot of sense when you say it like that, but it worked out to be quite a beautiful story, beautiful life in the end. I think the first time my dad saw a goat was probably when he bought the first 30. So, if he can do it, probably anyone can do it. But yeah, you just gotta have some passion, access to Amazon to buy some cheese making books, and some persistence.
Wow. So yeah, you're Slovenian, and you were all living in Slovenia. And as I recall, he was like a real estate attorney. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah, he was working
probably.
with real estate, kind of accidentally stumbled upon this property, which was abandoned for 20 or 30 or so years before we came here. The house was still livable, but the surroundings were all overgrown with vegetation. And then goats turned out to be a perfect solution for that because they naturally graze over all the bramble and the bushes. So that definitely helped clear everything out. And then they were very good at their job, so we kept them.
All right, before we get going on that story, because everyone who comes there, like we're going to be interrupted by dogs because everyone loves dogs, and you have some huge dogs that I'll show pictures of in this thing. But you've got like kind of the latest addition to your dog family in your
But
arms
the latest addition is sleeping in my lap a little bit.
right now. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
it's so funny because what's his or her name?
this is Lilu.
Lilu, yeah. Because compared to everyone else, this dog is like
She's
microscopic.
she's quite a bit smaller, definitely. Yeah, Ada is sleeping right behind me.
Uh,
Um, there's about almost my body weight difference between the two, I think. Um, but yeah, she definitely has character to make up for the size, you know.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so your dad got goats to clear out the brush and all the shrubs and all that stuff. And then what was he just like left with a bunch of goat milk and didn't know what to do with it?
Yeah, the sad reality is that back in those days, nobody really knew what to do with goat's milk. Nobody really had any affinity or preference to work with goat's milk. Nobody really wanted to buy our amounts. So then logic kind of dictated that we try to make our own cheese. It can't be that hard, right? Turns out it can be I mean, it's not hard to make cheese. It's a bit harder to make good cheese, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's the thing where probably a lot of people like don't get it right. They're like, I made
Yeah.
some cheese, but no one's gonna pay to eat it.
Yeah. But of course it didn't like come out of a sudden, you know. It took some trial and error, quite a few trials and quite a few errors. So I think in the first year when we started a production a bit more seriously, we threw almost everything away.
Mm.
But I think in the next 1 or 2 year, we won the Croatian championship for fresh goat cheese, which I don't know if it says more about our cheese or Croatian cheese, but let's leave that open to interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. Like how many people are actually submitting like samples to that?
I don't know. Unfortunately, I really don't know. But the thing is that, you know, the goat cheese in Croatia is still really quite undeveloped. In general, just cheese making, you know, farming in general is quite difficult in Croatia. So there's no difference with dairy farming and cheese making, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only real cheese I knew about at that point when I went there 11 years ago was the Pog, the the cheese from the island of Pog, because that's like even
Yeah.
back then you can get that like at some specialty stores you can get that imported into the US or whatever, and that is really amazing. But otherwise, I didn't know much about the cheese scene in Croatia, and kind of got spoiled because honestly, once you're at Kumparicka, then you're just like, well, like this is the only goat cheese we really need on the tour. So did you when you like all of a sudden had like packed up, left Ljubljana, moved down to Croatia, did you kind of immediately start like helping out with stuff, whether it's cheese making or hanging out with the goats or doing things or
Sure, I was hanging out with the goats. I was 12 around that time, so I wasn't very active. But I think already when I was getting about 15, 16, I was definitely way more active. I was still in school, so in the summers I would be helping out, whether that was in the kitchen on the farm or on the marketplace or in the cheese production. Every year was a little bit different.
Hmm. So, what was the did your dad have like a whole concept back then that you realized like, okay, we're making cheese and selling it, or was it also like, hey, let's have people come and taste it, or I mean, like I came there because I guess he had an offer at that point of like, hey, we could also make dinner, or did
Yeah.
did this kind of morph into that, or was there like this master
It
plan?
was kind of a natural progression of things. I think maybe my dad is no, he's not getting up. I thought he's getting up to say a few words, but he's not. So yeah, it was kind of a natural progression of things, I think, you know, starting off with just some cheese tastings because just having a farm and not having anyone try your products doesn't really make any sense, you know.
Mm.
So then it started out with the cheese tasting. Then our whole family likes to cook. So then cooking some simple meals was the next logical step. And then it evolved slowly into what it is now. We'll see where the next chapter takes us, you know?
Do you do some of the cooking then also?
Back then, I don't think I was so active in the kitchen. I was mostly working out, you know, um, having the tables on a piece of paper and yelling out what needs to go out, etc.
Yeah.
And working more with the service and welcoming the guests. But now we've kind of turned that around a little bit.
Mm. Yeah, because when I first went there, I don't know if there was any normal hours or like what you have now, which is usually like open in the summertime in the evenings or whatever. It was just well, like most of my visits actually have just been kind of a private affair. It's just
Mhm.
my group, which is actually really cool because we get the whole place to ourselves. But I mean, now like you offer not just dinners there or cheese tastings. You have programs where people can learn to make goat cheese, um, hang out with the goats, things like that. Are those some ideas that like you put in there because now you're more active with guests and things or
Well, yeah, I think it's never just a one person project, you know. This time of year, so more winter time, is where we spend a bit more time inside in front of the fireplace and just spitballing some ideas, you know. Some of them stick, some of them don't, and then we apply them in the summer.
Hmm, cool. So why don't you tell everyone what all types of cheeses do you make there?
We make a variety of fresh cheeses from kind of more French style logs of fresh cheese, ricotta, labne, which is kind of more Arabic, Middle Eastern approach to fresh cheese, feta, which is kind of Greek style. So all sorts of fresh cheeses, and then also a variety of mature or aged cheeses, spanning from 2 months to 3, 4 years. And because of our style of production, where the goats are grazing outside exclusively, it means that their diet is changing on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So, given that their diet is changing, it's also changing how the properties of their milk. So, spring cheese is very different from fall cheese because the diet and the food that the goats are able to find outside is very different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the one thing that I think is more new in the last few years is the labne, which I absolutely love. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things. And then what's interesting for because I used to say like, hey, we're gonna like taste goat cheese, and then it's like, well, there's really so much more than that, and you just never know what you're gonna get, which is another thing I like because there's really no menu. But this year we had like I think three different types of labne, and with all different types of what would you call it? Like I don't want to say toppings, but different like sauces or different herbs on top.
Mhm. Well, yeah, Lamna has really become quickly kind of even though it's in maybe the newest product that we have, definitely become a staple, both in the cheese production as well as in the restaurant that we do. It's just a very versatile product that I think works for a majority of people, even though who are not such fans of the goat. Um, Plus, it's really, really multi-purpose. You know, it goes great, both sweet, salty, savory, spicy, etc. It can really be used in a multitude of ways.
And what is your do you have like a favorite cheese or a favorite product there?
I definitely drink the most yogurt. Then second is of course probably labne, just because of how many places you can use it in. But when it comes to the semi-hard cheeses, I definitely my favorite season is kind of spring season around April and May, where everything starts fresh, you know. And there's just such a big variety of different plants that the goats can choose from that the cheeses are really special in that type of year. And with our production, really can't recreate the cheeses. They're quite seasonal.
Mm.
So cheeses that we produce in April or and May can't really be replicated in June or July. So it's always this anticipation and the build up, you know, that helps. keep them really special in my eyes as well.
Mm. Yeah, so it's almost like, well, like you could have like certain vintages, I suppose, could be, or years can be, or seasons can be not just different, but perhaps better depending on like how the weather might be and things like that. Um, so speaking of goats, how many, what's the current like goat count that you have or thereabouts?
Around 250. We always kind of keep it around that number, more or less. That's kind of the size of the herd that works best for us and for our production. We don't really plan on expanding because it would then require, having double of everything, both in the production and distribution, etc., as well as the people working. So it's a good number for us.
Hmm. And other than people coming like we do, coming to your farm for dinner or lunch or tasting cheeses, like what are some other places people can either buy your cheese or taste it at? Are you doing food trucks and stuff like that now or?
No, probably. We were present generally at farmers markets, at some special pop-up events, and just very, very few selected shops in the region, just because we really try to be conscious of where our cheese is being sold and who sells it,
Hmm.
just because it does have a special kind of story that you need to be able to explain to the customer, not have the customer just be shocked that the cheese is not exactly the same as it was 2 months ago, for example. It's not something we want, and you need the right type of person to be able to explain that.
Yeah. And you have it at some restaurants and hotels in Istria?
Well, yeah, we're much more spread out when it comes to restaurants. We do work a lot with the restaurants all over Istria, Zagreb, Slovenia, Italy, etc. There, of course, again, the people who are working with it are a bit more interested in it and educated about it. Plus, again, it's not a very common product that you see on the market in our region, unfortunately. So it's definitely special for restaurants as well.
Are you attending any of like the slow food type of events, whether it's in Croatia or like I know
Just
Italy's got a huge
yeah.
cheese I think it's
Slow food
biennial.
is more active in Italy, definitely. We were just in Trieste this weekend at
Oh,
their
shoot. I just missed you then.
yeah, they had a farmer and artist kind of market event, and we were there for the weekend with our cheese. It's supposed to be 2 days, but we sold our cheese the first day, so we packed it up and
Oh,
left on Sunday.
well, I guess I'd consider that a success.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, as far as kind of the tourism aspect of Kumparicka goes, I'm not exactly sure when you started the kind of summer evening type of thing. This actually when I was there in August. I think it was the first time I've ever done it. Like I said, I usually kind of with my private groups, just us alone. And that
True,
was
yeah.
very interesting because I didn't really know who to expect there. And it seemed like there were Croatians there too. It wasn't just like tourists that
No,
were visiting.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have a pretty good percentage of people that come to us are actually Croatian. So locals, which I'm personally really happy with. My goal is never to work just with tourists. We want to be accessible to local people as well, because those are the people who can enjoy our products throughout the whole year. So definitely people from Istria, but mostly also from maybe Zagreb, Rijeka, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I've told some people down in Dalmatia and they've heard of it before. So it seems like the word is out
Mm.
in Croatia. So, well, I don't know when it was. I think it was maybe in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, or could have been later because pandemic time wise is hard to remember. But Gordon Ramsay came and did a TV show in Croatia, and he was at your farm. Were you there for that shoot? Just curious, like how that
So,
was.
uh, I was. It was quite funny. Didn't know what to expect, but definitely surprised me a bit by the size of the production and how professional everything was. It was really the cameras were rolling nonstop, so they got all the action in.
Yeah, I saw. I'm gonna put I'll either put a clip of it in here or I'll put a link when we post this. But
Yeah.
yeah, I looked at it and I thought, oh yeah, this would be great if like I could shoot something like
Yeah.
this when I'm there
I
with
think
guests. And then I was like, how many cameras do they have? I mean,
I don't want to get into details because I don't want to, spill all the secrets because my personal opinion is maybe not very TV friendly. It's just, yeah, I feel bad for the guy in the end, to be honest. They're just like pushing him around. He didn't even know where he was, I think.
Oh
But
no.
let's not tell that to
Yeah.
everybody.
Well, hopefully he at least enjoyed the cheese, or hopefully he actually got to eat the cheese and not just like
He
pull
did eat
shenanigans on the
the cheese,
camera.
but really, like he was at the farm for maybe 50 minutes, 45 of those minutes, the camera was rolling. And when the camera was rolling, he was doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really envy him at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's I mean, well, that's why it's kind of like reality. It's like reality TV, not like actuality TV.
Yeah. So it's sometimes a good selling point, but that's all.
Yeah, that's true. So actually because in for Croatia, I know that I think it was 2022 you were already past as a country, as a whole country, we're past pre-pandemic levels for tourism. Have you noticed how has it been in the last since the pandemic as far as tourism goes and visits and all that happening at your farm?
It's hard to say because there's of course so many factors that go into it, but it's also different every year. I feel differences from year to year, not just based on pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, um, based on I don't know the nationality of guests, the type of guests that come to Istria, etc. But yeah, again, like the locals are the ones that keep coming no matter what. So that's always the most important for me to have kind of be accessible to them as well and that they enjoy their time here. Definitely you can feel the difference whether there's more Eastern Europeans, more Western Europeans, people who fly in. It all depends on, how well connected we are. So it really depends. Every year is a little bit different.
Yeah, I noticed with the some of the Croatians who were there a couple of the times that I went in the summer, they had guests with them. I think there was like had some German friends, someone had some Russian friends.
Mhm.
So it was like they're like spreading the word around and wrangling up whoever was coming to visit them at the time, which was I thought was pretty cool because then it just makes it more fun. And the way you have it set up in the summertime is you have those huge tables outside. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's family style anyway, almost the way you're fed, but it's also just like you can kind of rub elbows with whoever else happens to be there at the time.
Yeah, I really enjoy this concept because it pulls people out of their comfort zone a little bit. Even though, now during fall, I've been around maybe some restaurants in Italy, and my thinking is right now we have our tables are way too big because if we were in Italy, not only we would be rubbing elbows with guests, but also our asses, because they really put you together so much closer than we do. And we're out here worried that, the people are too close. I think sometimes they should be even closer. But it's quite nice just because it really, it puts the focus more on the table. People are usually kind of a bit more reserved when it comes to being on their phone. I noticed a lot. Just because someone's right next to you, you feel bad for being on your phone the whole time. There's also kind of this communal style of exchange. Oh, you're missing some bread, let me get you some. And then people start to make conversation, which otherwise they wouldn't have met, which I think is quite beautiful. Food bringing people together.
Yeah, I think so too. I kind of wish that more restaurants would just be like, hey, unless you have a table reserved, we're like just have bigger tables and you just put people together because that is the best way to, especially a place like that where like, like you already have like you not everyone's going there because it's truly in the middle of nowhere. So you really have to be like hardcore determined to get there. I think one of our guests, someone came there by taxi, or I met some Russian girls that came there by taxi, and the taxi driver was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Are you sure this place exists?" Because he wasn't really sure if he
I
was going to get to an
remember.
actual place or not.
I remember actually, yeah.
Yeah. So as far as the food goes, do you kind of, is it all just like, hey, here's what we normally make at home, or is it like, hey, do you like have a conversation like, let's try something new out? Because I know I've had some, like, I want to say I've had some more like kind of Turkish style kebabs. I had something very kind of Indian curry like before too. So just wondering how that process goes.
It depends a little bit, but it's definitely a bit more advanced. We don't always usually have a, 6 course meal when we do dinner for ourselves. Usually in the summer, we're a bit more uh, minimal when it comes to that. When it comes to the cooking, we definitely do have quite a lot of international influences. For me personally, it's mostly just Middle Eastern food because, goat has been a part of their culinary tradition for a very long time. Same goes from, curries and maybe Indian food. Just when you look outside of Europe specifically, there's a lot more goat present. Whereas in Europe, goat is kind of disregarded as this, first you have the cow, then you have the sheep, and then you have the goat.
Mhm.
Whereas in other places in the world, goat is the animal to have, which I completely understand. And you can make really delicious stuff out of both goat's milk as well as the meat. So I really think it makes sense to combine more those flavor profiles with our food.
Yeah, that's one thing I really enjoy because, um, well, first of all, I mean, for those who haven't been, Istria kind of, it is like the food there in general is different than continental Croatia, which is very different than Dalmatia. But it's nice you have extremely local 0 kilometer food products, but you're blending it in with very different styles like the labne and some of these kebabs and just some of the spices, or usually there's some sumac there, or like some really great dried chili peppers, which you don't get everywhere else in Croatia. So it's a really nice like a mashup of like extremely local with like taking what you guys have and mixing it in with all these other styles, which I'm extremely partial to eating Middle Eastern and Asian food. So I'm always like, yay, lame. Um, so last thing I wanted to ask you about is um, because I want to bring this up for some guests, because there's some people who are like, hey, I want to do a lot more travel and not always on tours and things like that. Is I noticed that you had some workaway people this summer, and I don't know, maybe you've had them for a while. What kind of experience have you had with that? And I'm wondering if you've tried that yourself or not, because workaway is a really interesting and cool idea. I think for any age range, I think maybe a lot of people think it's young people only, but I think it's not.
We're actually working with WOOF, which is kind of a similar program. It's just called Worldwide Organization of Organic Farms. So
Hmm.
it's more specific to organic farming. We started out this year. We had a really, really great experience. I think we had around 15 people stay with us total, just from in 5 months, or maybe even less, maybe 4 months, not sure. And it's a great experience. People stayed with us for a minimum of 2 weeks, and the maximum so far was 1 month.
Hmm.
It's really great for us just because being a working farm, there's quite a lot of things to do, and sometimes you just need a few extra pairs of hands, especially when, I don't know, we had the tomato harvest season in which we produced 660 kilograms of tomatoes. I'm not sure. Maybe you can help me out with how much that is in pounds, etc.
That's a lot of pounds. I think that's about 1,500 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big number. So sometimes you just need some helping hands.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely we're gonna keep going at it in the next years to come. And I'm soon going to Mexico actually to have a woofing experience myself. I'm going there in January, and I'm gonna be on a coffee, cocoa, and vanilla bean farm for 2 weeks.
Whoa, that sounds great. If nothing else, just like the smell every day must be a
Yeah, 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 yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Where is it? Where is that in Mexico?
It's in the Huautesca Potosina, so close to San Luis Potosí,
Hmm.
just in the rainforest, basically.
Wow, that sounds interesting. Well, I've been a member of Workaway, which is a
Mhm.
little similar, although it's all it could be for anything, not just organic farms. But I haven't gone on one yet. I've just inquired, but I'm actually thinking this summer of maybe like, hey, this summer I'm actually going to go do something. I actually wouldn't mind doing it with my kids. So I suppose since you're not so far away, that perhaps like I'll be like, hey, like I've eaten here enough that now I should actually like work here, and then I'll get the like inside scoop on stuff and maybe like whisper some ideas of mine into everyone's heads, like, hey, when my guests come, how about we try making this? But it'd be a lot of fun to actually kind of to really appreciate more of like how much work it is, because I think working in tourism with some farms and not so many like your own, I know exactly how. I mean, I don't know exactly how much. I just know it's a lot of work that most of us regular working people don't ever do.
Mm. It's definitely quite different than, your classic 9 to 5, but you get quite used to it and spoiled by it as well, by this type of lifestyle. I mean, I'm not made for the city life anymore.
Yeah, so the move down to Istria kind of probably changed your trajectory in life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't really know where I would be if we hadn't moved, it would be a completely different life direction, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know where I'd be kind of like with cheese experiences on my tours without Kumparicka, because there's certain places that you cannot like you cannot switch out. If one of
Mhm.
the wineries cancels on me, it's like, okay, well, we've got a lot of great wineries to go to. But if there's no Kumparicka, it's like there's no plan B. It's like, okay, I guess there's no cheese on the tour this year.
All right, no worries. We got you covered.
Yeah, I know it's like with 250 goats, like I'm confident, like, there's always going to be at least some amount of cheese there waiting for us. Well, thanks to Tita for joining us. I really appreciate it. I hope all of our guests learned a little bit more about what they offer and working on farms. And if you want to taste this, because there's no way you're going to taste this in America, you have to come over here and get it, because they're never sending it over there. It's a true experience. And I could say this because there's definitely some people who are like, I'm not into goat cheese, or I'm just going to eat a few kind of non-stinky cheeses, and everyone loves the experience. I don't think it really matters if you could even not eat any cheese and you'd still love it there.
I think so too.
Thanks for joining us, Tita.
Yeah, thank you. And to your guests, I hope to see you soon.